Welcome to the channel Cucuy, where nightmares don't wait for bedtime. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. 3 tales, 1 chance to look away. But you probably won't, because it's already watching.
In the late 2000s, a case landed on the desk of Dr. Richard Gallagher. He was a board-certified psychiatrist and a respected professor at New York Medical College. For over 2 decades, Dr. Gallagher had treated thousands of patients. He was a man of science, grounded in evidence and rational explanations. His professional life was built on the principles of empirical data and diagnostic clarity. He approached every case with a clinical eye, seeking logical causes for complex human behaviors. Yet, what he encountered in the case of a woman known only as Julia would profoundly challenge his established certainties. Julia was in her late 30s, a woman described as charismatic and intelligent. She was deeply enmeshed in occult practices, even identifying herself as a high priestess within a self-proclaimed satanic cult. Her local priest, deeply concerned by Julia's increasingly disturbing claims and behaviors, sought medical consultation. Before considering an exorcism, the priest contacted Dr. Gallagher. He requested a thorough psychiatric evaluation to rule out any underlying mental health conditions. This was a standard, responsible step, ensuring all conventional explanations were exhausted before spiritual interventions were considered. During his initial meeting with Julia, Dr. Gallagher observed something profoundly unsettling. Without any prior prompting or discussion, Julia began to disclose intimate details about his personal life. She spoke of a beloved cat of his, recounting the specific circumstances of its death. This was information Dr. Gallagher had never shared with anyone. It was a private grief, a memory held close, and its unsolicited revelation by a complete stranger was deeply disquieting. This moment immediately set Julia's case apart from any he had encountered before. As Dr. Gallagher continued his interviews, Julia would periodically fall into a trance-like state. In these moments, her voice would undergo a dramatic transformation. It would deepen, becoming guttural and laced with an undeniable contempt. During these episodes, she would speak fluently in Latin and utter obscure biblical phrases. This was remarkable, as Julia had no formal education in either classical languages or theological texts. The shift was not merely vocal, it was a complete alteration of her linguistic and intellectual capacity. Witnesses to Julia's episodes included nurses, priests, and other medical professionals. Their accounts consistently described inexplicable phenomena occurring in her presence. Objects would reportedly move on their own, seemingly defying the laws of physics. Temperatures in the room would suddenly and dramatically plummet, creating an unnerving chill. During one particularly chilling incident, a voice, unmistakably Julia's yet profoundly altered, emanated from her. It was low, menacing, and declared, "Leave me, she is ours." One night, Dr. Gallagher received a call from the exorcism team. They were hours away from performing the ritual, and Julia was hundreds of miles from Dr. Gallagher's location. The conversation was routine, discussing the final preparations for the impending event. Then, abruptly, a woman's voice broke in over the line. It was unmistakably Julia's. The voice, cold and clear, stated, "We will get you, doctor. We will get you too." The priests on the other end of the line swore that Julia was in their immediate presence at that exact moment. The exorcism itself was a grueling ordeal, lasting for many hours. Julia's behavior during the ritual was extreme and disturbing. She alternated between screaming in what sounded like foreign tongues, convulsing violently, and mocking the sacred prayers with blasphemous chants. Witnesses present during the ritual claimed that Julia briefly levitated above her chair. At one point, she vomited an extraordinary amount of an unknown black fluid. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence descended. Julia returned to herself, appearing utterly exhausted. She later admitted to having no memory of the entire event. Despite the exhaustive efforts of the exorcism team, Julia never fully committed to renouncing her involvement in the occult. According to Dr. Gallagher, this lack of complete renunciation allowed the perceived possession to return. Eventually, Julia severed all contact with Dr. Gallagher and the team. To this day, Dr. Richard Gallagher steadfastly maintains that Julia's case was not a manifestation of mental illness, nor was it hysteria or any form of trickery. He stands by his assessment, even in the face of skepticism. In his own words, he acknowledges the extraordinary nature of his claims. He has stated, "I'm aware of the incredible-sounding nature of this case, but the facts are the facts. There was no other explanation. Julia's whereabouts remain unknown. Her case continues to be one of the most compelling modern claims of demonic possession, documented by a man of science."
The unholy inspiration, Roland and the Exorcist. In the winter of 1949, in a quiet Maryland suburb, a boy began to change. He was just 14 years old, an ordinary teenager, but what happened to him would terrify priests, baffle doctors, and inspire one of the most famous horror films of all time. This is the chilling true story behind the fiction, a narrative steeped in the inexplicable, where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural blurred into a terrifying reality. Known today only by the pseudonym Roland, the boy was described as shy, polite, and deeply connected to his Aunt Harriet. It was Aunt Harriet, a spiritualist with an interest in the occult, who introduced him to the Ouija board. This seemingly innocent pastime, a parlor game for many, would soon become the suspected gateway to an unfolding nightmare. After Aunt Harriet's sudden death, a profound grief settled over the household, but it was quickly overshadowed by something far more sinister. The first signs were subtle, almost dismissible. Roland began hearing scratching sounds inside his walls, faint at first, then growing in intensity. Objects moved on their own, small items shifting inexplicably. Soon the phenomena escalated dramatically. Furniture slid across the floor with no visible force. At night, his bed shook violently, rattling the entire room, defying any logical explanation. The family's initial bewilderment quickly morphed into profound fear. They were living in a house that seemed to be turning against them, a silent, unseen force asserting its presence. His parents, frightened and desperate, sought answers. They turned first to medical professionals, hoping for a diagnosis, a rational explanation for their son's increasingly erratic behavior and the terrifying occurrences within their home. Doctors, however, found nothing physically wrong with Roland. His condition defied medical understanding, leaving them without answers or solutions. With conventional avenues exhausted, they turned to their Lutheran pastor, a man of faith, but one who quickly recognized the limits of his own experience in the face of such profound and disturbing events. The pastor, Father Luther Miles, witnessed some of the inexplicable phenomena himself. He heard the scratching, saw objects move. Overwhelmed by the escalating strangeness, he advised the family to contact the Catholic Church, suggesting that this was a matter beyond his purview, a spiritual affliction requiring a different kind of intervention. This recommendation marked a pivotal shift, moving the case from the realm of medical mystery to that of spiritual warfare. The Catholic Church, with its ancient rites and long history of dealing with such claims, became their last desperate hope. Father Albert Hughes, a local Catholic priest, was the first to attempt an exorcism. He arrived with a sense of duty, perhaps a degree of skepticism, but certainly unprepared for the raw, violent power he was about to encounter. The ritual began, a solemn invocation, but it was quickly shattered. During the attempt, Roland broke free from his restraints with impossible strength. In a terrifying display, he ripped a spring from the mattress, a feat of incredible force, and then, with chilling precision, slashed the priest's arm from shoulder to wrist. The attack was brutal, leaving Father Hughes severely wounded and the family more terrified than ever. This violent incident confirmed the gravity of the situation for the church. This was no mere psychological disturbance. It was something far more dangerous, something that actively resisted spiritual intervention. The case was immediately escalated, drawing the attention of higher authorities within the archdiocese. A team was assembled, led by Father William Bowden, a seasoned Jesuit priest, and assisted by Father Walter Halloran and Father William Van Roo. They were tasked with completing the exorcism, a daunting and perilous undertaking that would test their faith, their resolve, and their understanding of reality itself. The priests kept a meticulous diary, a chilling, detailed record of what they witnessed over the course of the following weeks. This diary, a testament to their ordeal, documented the escalating manifestations and the profound terror they experienced. Words appeared on the boy's skin, seemingly carved by an unseen hand. One read "Hell," a stark, terrifying declaration. Another, even more ominous, read "Exit," a word that would reappear at the climax of the ordeal. These physical markings, appearing and disappearing, defied any rational explanation, deepening the mystery and the horror. The exorcisms took place over a month, moving between various locations, including a hospital in St. Louis. The choice of a hospital was pragmatic, offering a controlled environment, but it did little to contain the chaos. Roland would speak in guttural voices, voices that were clearly not his own, often screaming in Latin, a language he had no knowledge of. He would convulse violently whenever holy water touched his skin, reacting as if burned. The phenomena were not limited to the boy himself. Witnesses, including nurses and other clergy, reported that the bed would shake violently, sometimes lifting off the floor. The boy himself would levitate, hovering above the mattress. Objects would fly across the room, hurled by an invisible force, shattering against walls. The air in the room would grow cold, a palpable chill that seemed to emanate from the boy himself. The ordeal reached its terrifying crescendo one night. As the priests continued their prayers, the word "exit" appeared again, this time scratched deep into Roland's torso, a final, desperate message. Moments later, in a voice that was not his own, yet resonated with an undeniable authority, Roland shouted, "Satan, I am St. Michael, and I command you to leave this child now." The declaration was sudden, powerful, and utterly unexpected. Immediately after, the boy collapsed, his body going limp. The room, which had been a maelstrom of chaos and terror, fell into an abrupt, profound stillness. When he opened his eyes, the change was immediate and undeniable. The guttural voices were gone. The convulsions had ceased. He looked at the priests, his eyes clear, and calmly said, "It is gone." The priests reported that from that moment on, the phenomena stopped entirely. The scratching, the moving objects, the levitation, the violent reactions, all ceased. Roland returned to school, seemingly unharmed by his ordeal. He never spoke of the events again, choosing to live a life of quiet anonymity, forever marked by an experience he could never fully explain. The case of Roland Doe remains one of the most compelling and controversial in the annals of paranormal investigation. Skeptics argue it was a complex case of severe mental illness, perhaps exacerbated by adolescent rage, trauma, or even a form of dissociative identity disorder. They point to the lack of verifiable scientific evidence and the inherent suggestibility of witnesses in highly charged religious environments. From this perspective, the physical manifestations could be attributed to hysteria, self-inflicted injuries, or even elaborate hoaxes. Believers, however, insist that the detailed diary entries, the consistent accounts of multiple witnesses, and the sheer impossibility of some of the physical manifestations point to something far darker, something beyond the realm of conventional science or psychology. They argue that the specific details, such as the Latin phrases and the violent reactions to holy objects, defy easy explanation and align with traditional descriptions of demonic possession. The truth, shrouded in the passage of time and the inherent subjectivity of human experience, may never be definitively known. But what happened in those rooms in 1949, the terror witnessed by priests and family alike, still sends chills through anyone who dares to read the case files. The real story of Roland Doe became the basis for William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel The Exorcist, and subsequently, the iconic film. The boy, now a man, is still alive, living under a different name, his identity protected, a silent testament to a terrifying chapter in history that continues to haunt and provoke. The Tanacu Exorcism, a deadly ritual. Romania, 2005. In a remote convent on the edge of a small village, a young nun was tied to a wooden cross. She had been gagged, denied food. The priest in charge said it was the only way to save her soul. Her name was Marichka Irina Cornici. She was 23 years old. Romania, 2005. In a remote convent on the edge of a small village, a young nun was tied to a wooden cross. She had been gagged, denied food. The priest in charge said it was the only way to save her soul. Her name was Marichka Irina Cornici. She was 23 years old. Irina Cornici's life had been marked by hardship from an early age. She grew up in an orphanage, a common fate for many children in post-communist Romania. Seeking purpose and belonging, she found solace in faith. This led her to the Holy Trinity convent in the secluded village of Tanacu, nestled in the Moldavian hills. At first, Irina was described as cheerful and eager to serve God. She embraced the monastic life, finding a new family among the sisters. The convent offered a structured existence, a sanctuary from the uncertainties of the outside world. Weeks before her death, Irina's behavior began to change dramatically. What started as minor eccentricities escalated into alarming episodes. Witnesses reported her laughing uncontrollably at inappropriate times, shouting obscenities, and speaking in voices that were not her own. She became increasingly agitated, lashing out violently at the other nuns. These manifestations were deeply disturbing to the isolated community. In a place where faith was paramount, such behavior was quickly interpreted through a spiritual lens. The convent had no medical staff, no access to psychiatric evaluation. Their only recourse was prayer and the guidance of their spiritual leader. The local priest, Father Daniel Corogeanu, was the spiritual guide for the Holy Trinity convent. He observed Irina's escalating symptoms and concluded she was not suffering from an illness of the mind, but rather an affliction of the soul. He believed she was possessed by a demon. Father Corogeanu was a charismatic figure, deeply rooted in traditional Orthodox beliefs. For him, the spiritual realm was a tangible force, and demonic possession was a very real threat. He saw it as his duty to confront this evil, to free Irina from its grasp. Instead of sending Irina to a hospital, Father Corogeanu ordered an exorcism. This was not a decision taken lightly, but one born of profound conviction. 4 nuns, acting under his direction, restrained Irina. They bound her to a wooden cross, a symbolic act meant to invoke divine protection and control the perceived demonic outbursts. A towel was placed in her mouth not to silence her, but to stop the blasphemies that Father Corogeanu believed were emanating from the demon within her. She was left in a cold room, deprived of almost all food and water. The intention, according to the priest, was to weaken the demon, to make it relinquish its hold. For days the ritual continued. The nuns and Father Corogeanu read prayers over Irina constantly, their voices echoing in the cold, sparse room. They invoked saints, recited ancient incantations, and pleaded with God to free her from the torment they believed she endured. Each prayer was a desperate plea, a battle waged against an unseen enemy. Irina's condition deteriorated rapidly. The lack of sustenance, the extreme cold, and the physical restraint took a devastating toll on her already fragile state. Her cries and struggles grew weaker, replaced by a chilling silence. The line between spiritual struggle and physical suffering blurred, then vanished entirely. By the 4th day, Irina had stopped moving. She was unresponsive, her body still bound to the cross. The convent finally called an ambulance, but it was a desperate, belated act. By the time medical professionals arrived, it was too late. Irina Cornici was dead. An autopsy revealed the grim truth. She had died of dehydration and asphyxiation. The official cause was oxygen deprivation and lack of fluids. The medical examination also uncovered a crucial detail. Irina had schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that had gone undiagnosed and untreated. Her erratic behavior, interpreted as demonic possession, was in fact the manifestation of a treatable medical condition. The death of Irina Cornici shocked Romania and made international headlines. The case ignited a fierce debate between religious belief and medical science, between ancient traditions and modern understanding. Father Corogeanu and the 4 nuns involved were arrested and charged with murder. During the trial, Father Corogeanu remained unrepentant, steadfast in his conviction. He defended his actions, stating, "She had to be cured. If there is a demon, you don't send them to the hospital." His defense argued that he was acting out of faith, attempting to save a soul, not to cause harm. The prosecution, however, presented a case of gross negligence and a fatal disregard for human life. The court ultimately found Father Corogianu guilty of murder, sentencing him to 7 years in prison. The 4 nuns received shorter sentences for their roles in the tragic event. The verdict sent shockwaves through Romania, dividing public opinion. For some, it was a just outcome, a condemnation of fanaticism and a victory for reason. For others, it was a persecution of faith, a misunderstanding of spiritual warfare. The Tanacu Exorcism became a national scandal, a stark illustration of the dangers that can arise when faith supersedes all other considerations. It was seen by many as a tragedy born of ignorance, a young woman's life sacrificed on the altar of misguided belief. Yet for a vocal minority, it remained a battle with true evil that ended in martyrdom, a testament to the power of the demonic. Irina's death inspired books, documentaries, and even a feature film, Beyond the Hills, which brought the chilling story to a global audience. But for those who lived in Tanacu, it left behind something else, a profound silence. The Holy Trinity Convent was closed, its doors sealed, its purpose abandoned. The Romanian Orthodox Church, facing immense public pressure and scrutiny, was forced to address the issue. The Church has since issued strict guidelines for exorcisms, including mandatory medical evaluations before any such ritual can be performed. This was a significant step, acknowledging the need for a balance between spiritual care and medical intervention. However, in remote corners of the world and within certain deeply traditional communities, faith still sometimes takes precedence over medicine. The tragic case of Irina Cornici remains a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences when it does. Still here. You made it through this time. But the channel Cucuy isn't done with you. He feeds on curiosity. And you're already hooked. Subscribe before he finds someone else.